Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
The late afternoon sun, usually a comforting presence, felt like a spotlight on my porch. My dog Buster, a golden retriever with a tail that wagged for everyone, whimpered beside me, nudging his nose into my hand. That's when I saw it, a crisp white envelope tucked beneath a rock, resting precariously close to Buster's favorite napping spot. My name, William, was scrawled across it in an elegant, almost flowery script, but it was the single crude drawing beneath it, a silhouette of a dog, X'd out, that sent a chill through me. My stomach clenched. I ripped open the envelope. The note inside was brief, typed, and laced with a venom that made my blood run cold. Your dog's incessant barking is disturbing the peace. This is your only warning. Next time it won't be a warning. Consider this a notice of intent. We know where you live, and we know where your dog sleeps. No signature, but the message was clear. This wasn't just a neighborly complaint. This was a threat, and I had a pretty good idea who was behind it: Karen Thompson. Karen had moved into our quiet cul-de-sac about 6 months ago, and ever since it felt like a dark cloud had settled over the neighborhood. First, it was the voluntary neighborhood watch, which quickly devolved into her patrolling the streets, clipboard in hand, scrutinizing every lawn gnome and mailbox. Then came the Community Beautification Initiative, which essentially meant she dictated what color you could paint your trim and how tall your hedges could be. We didn't even have a formal HOA, not really, just a loose association of homeowners who occasionally chipped in for holiday decorations. But Karen, with her self-appointed title of Community Standards Liaison, had been trying to formalize it, pushing for bylaws and, more importantly, fines. She'd tried to fine Mrs. Henderson for having too many bird feeders, and Mr. Chen for leaving his recycling bin out for an extra hour. We'd all laughed it off then, but this was different. This was personal. This was Buster. I looked down at him, his big brown eyes looking up at me, innocent and trusting. The thought of anyone harming him twisted something inside me. I folded the note, my hands trembling slightly. Who would do something like this? It had to be Karen. She'd complained about Buster before, but never like this. Always with a syrupy, sweet smile. "Oh, William, your little fella is just so enthusiastic, isn't he? A little too enthusiastic sometimes, if you catch my drift." Her drifts were always thinly veiled threats. This was beyond veiled. This was an outright declaration of war. What was I going to do? "You're telling me you received a death threat against Buster?" my friend Judith asked, her voice hushed, eyes wide with disbelief as she reread the note. We were sitting in my kitchen, the offending paper spread out between us like a dangerous map. Buster, oblivious, snored softly at my feet. "William, this is serious. You have to go to the police." The police? What would I even tell them? I ran a hand through my hair, frustration bubbling up. Some anonymous note about my dog barking, they'd laugh me out of the station. Besides, I can't prove it's Karen. She's too clever for that. Clever or not, someone is threatening your dog, Judith insisted, tapping the note with a manicured finger. And anonymous or not, there's a pattern here. This HOA she's trying to create, it's all about control. And now it's escalated to this. She paused, her gaze drifting to the window, then back to me. What if she actually goes through with it, William? What if she's not just bluffing? That thought had been gnawing at me since I found the note. The image of Buster, sick or worse, was a constant, unwelcome visitor in my mind. I couldn't let that happen. "I need to talk to her," I said, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. "I need to confront her directly. Find out what she wants." Judith's eyes narrowed. "Are you insane? You confront her and she'll just deny everything. Or worse, she'll accuse you of harassment. You need to gather evidence. Talk to other neighbors. I've heard whispers about her, complaints about her tactics. You're not the only one she's targeted." Her words resonated. I had heard similar rumblings, Mrs. Henderson with her bird feeders and Mr. Chen with his recycling bin. But everyone seemed too intimidated to speak up. Karen had a way of making people feel small, of making them doubt themselves. She'd weaponized politeness, using a saccharine smile to deliver devastating blows. But this was different. This was about Buster. This was about my family. And I wasn't going to back down. I spent the rest of the evening walking Buster, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I needed to expose Karen for what she was before she could harm anyone else, especially Buster. But how? How do you fight someone who hides behind the guise of community spirit while wielding threats like a weapon? The answer came to me as I watched Buster chase a squirrel, his tail wagging furiously. I needed to turn her own game against her. I needed to get the neighborhood to rally, not against me, but against her. But first, I needed to figure out if this was just an empty threat, or if Karen Thompson was truly capable of such maliciousness. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. The next few days were a blur of hushed conversations and clandestine meetings. Judith had been right. I wasn't alone. Mrs. Henderson, a sweet elderly woman who adored her feathered friends, was almost in tears recounting how Karen had threatened her with a nuisance fine for the birdseed on her lawn. She said it attracted vermin. William, Mrs. Henderson whispered, her voice trembling. My little chickadees, vermin? Mr. Chen, usually so stoic, recounted how Karen had taken pictures of his overflowing recycling bin, threatening to report him to the city for unsightly waste management. The stories piled up, each one adding another layer to Karen's tyrannical reign. She wasn't just targeting me. She was terrorizing the entire neighborhood, slowly, subtly chipping away at our sense of peace. But the real turning point came when word spread about the official HOA meeting Karen had scheduled. She had sent out flyers, printed on thick, cream-colored paper, announcing the formation of a formal homeowners association and the election of its first official board. She, of course, was listed as the interim president. The flyer also detailed a new fee structure, a mandatory monthly due of $150, with hefty fines for everything from unapproved exterior paint colors to excessive noise disturbances. A direct jab at Buster. The neighborhood buzzed with a mix of outrage and resignation. Everyone knew what this meant. Karen was solidifying her power, and if we didn't act now, we'd be living under her iron rule indefinitely. I knew I couldn't let that happen. Not after the threat to Buster, not after hearing all the stories from my neighbors. This wasn't just about my dog anymore. It was about reclaiming our community. I called an emergency meeting at my house, inviting everyone I'd spoken to and urging them to spread the word. About 15 people showed up, a mix of young families and retirees, all with the same look of weary frustration on their faces. I laid out the note about Buster, passed around copies of Karen's new HOA flyer, and then I spoke. I talked about the erosion of our freedom, the constant fear of arbitrary fines, and the growing tension that had replaced our once friendly neighborhood atmosphere. We have to do something, I finished, looking around at the somber faces. This isn't about one person's power trip. It's about our homes, our peace of mind, our pets. We can't let her do this. There was a murmur of agreement, a collective sigh of defiance. Mrs. Henderson, emboldened, spoke up first. She threatened my bird feeders, William, my little chickadees. Mr. Chen nodded vigorously. My recycling bin. She took pictures. The dam had broken. People started sharing their own stories, the anger and frustration finally spilling out. That's when someone, a younger guy named Mark who'd only lived here a few months, spoke up. We need to beat her at her own game, he said, a glint in his eye. She wants an election, let's give her an election. But we're going to run our own slate of candidates. And we're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what Karen Thompson is capable of. We need a petition, a public forum, everything. We fight fire with fire. It was a risky move. Karen had already shown she was willing to go to extreme lengths. But looking at the determined faces around my living room, I knew we had to try. The question remained, what would Karen do when faced with a united front? The answer would come very, very soon. We had scheduled our own informal gathering for the following evening after work, hoping to capitalize on the momentum of our emergency meeting. My living room was still buzzing with the echoes of shared frustrations, a collective sigh of defiance that had finally found its voice. We needed to formalize our opposition, to translate raw anger into concrete action. Mark had a knack for organization, for seeing the strategic moves in this petty war. He proposed we draft a counter-flyer outlining our alternative slate of candidates and a clear, concise mission statement for a real homeowners association. One built on community support, not fear and fines. Janice, or rather Judith, as I should have remembered to call her, was instrumental in this. She had a keen eye for detail, and she meticulously helped us wordsmith the flyer, ensuring it was both professional and impactful, avoiding any language that Karen could easily dismiss as slander or unsubstantiated claims. We highlighted the proposed new code of conduct for board members, emphasizing transparency, reasonable dispute resolution, and most importantly, no arbitrary fines without due process. It was a direct rebuttal to Karen's dictatorial style, a vision of what our neighborhood could be if we took back control. Printing those flyers felt like an act of rebellion in itself. We chose a simple, stark white paper, a stark contrast to Karen's thick, cream-colored, self-important announcements. We spent the next day quietly distributing them, slipping them under doors, tucking them into mailboxes, a silent army preparing for battle. We encouraged everyone to show up at Karen's official HOA meeting, to be present, to be visible, and to show a united front. The plan was to arrive early before Karen could establish her usual domineering presence, and distribute our own literature directly to attendees. We wanted every single person walking into that clubhouse to know there was an alternative, that they didn't have to succumb to her fabricated authority. The tension in the neighborhood became almost unbearable. Whispers replaced open conversations. Neighbors would nod conspiratorially across lawns, a shared understanding in their eyes. Everyone knew the upcoming meeting wouldn't be the rubber stamp affair Karen envisioned. It was set to be a confrontation, a public reckoning for months of petty tyranny, and for me, a direct response to a very serious threat. Buster, oblivious to the simmering conflict, continued to wag his tail and chase squirrels, a symbol of the very peace we were fighting to reclaim. The clubhouse doors, where Karen planned to solidify her reign, now felt less like a community space and more like an arena for a decisive, unpredictable showdown. The official HOA meeting, as Karen had grandly dubbed it, was scheduled for a Saturday morning in the small community clubhouse. We arrived early, a contingent of 30-odd neighbors clutching our own flyers. Unlike Karen's cream-colored missives, ours were simple, stark white, listing our proposed alternative board members: Mark, Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Chen, Judith, and me, and a clear statement about a new fair code of conduct for any future board. We also included a line about actual community building, like block parties, not fines. We handed them out silently as people arrived, the tension in the room thickening with each passing minute. Karen, dressed in a crisp linen suit, entered the room with an air of self-importance, her smile faltering only slightly as she saw the sheer number of us. She probably expected 5 or 6 disgruntled homeowners, not a small army. The meeting started, and Karen immediately launched into a lengthy, self-congratulatory speech about her vision for the neighborhood. She spoke of property value enhancement and harmonious living, all while conveniently omitting the mandatory fees and draconian fines. When she finally opened the floor for questions, Mark, bless his bold heart, was the first to stand. "Karen," he began, his voice clear and steady, "we have some questions about your proposed fee structure, and about accountability. What happens if a board member abuses their power, for instance?" Karen's smile vanished, replaced by a tight, thin line. "Mr. Jensen, these are standard procedures for a functioning HOA. As for accountability, the board is, of course, accountable to the homeowners." Her answer was vague, dismissive. That's when Mrs. Henderson surprisingly stepped forward. "I have a question about bird feeders, Karen," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "Do you truly believe a few bird feeders are a nuisance that warrants a $50 fine?" Karen blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Mrs. Henderson, as I've explained, they attract vermin. It's about maintaining a pristine environment." "A pristine environment for whom, Karen?" I interjected, stepping forward. "Because for many of us this pristine environment has become a place of fear. And what about threats? What about anonymous notes threatening people's pets?" I pulled out the anonymous note I'd received, holding it up for everyone to see. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Karen's face went pale, then blotchy red. "I don't know what you're talking about, William," she stammered, her composure cracking. "This is slander." "Is it slander, Karen?" Mr. Chen asked, holding up a picture of his recycling bin. "Or is it a pattern of intimidation, of control, and of a fake HOA created to satisfy one person's desire for power?" The room erupted. Voices clamored, stories poured out, each one adding fuel to the fire. People who had been too afraid to speak before now found their voices emboldened by our united front. Karen tried to regain control, banging a small gavel she'd brought, but her authority had evaporated. The air was thick with accusations, frustration, and a rising tide of collective anger. "This meeting is adjourned," Karen shrieked, her voice high-pitched and strained, but no one listened. The neighborhood had found its voice, and it was screaming for justice. The true twist came when someone from the back, a quiet woman I'd rarely seen, stepped forward, holding a thick binder. "I work for the current property management company," she announced, her voice trembling slightly. "Karen Thompson has been trying to get them to approve fines against almost half the properties in this cul-de-sac. They refused, saying they had no legal basis. That's why she wanted to fire them." A hush fell over the room. Karen Thompson had been trying to get our management company to impose her fake fines? The management company, the one she was now trying to fire, had been protecting us all along. The room turned on her. A furious wave of accusations. Karen, cornered, finally did something truly bizarre. With a wild, desperate look in her eyes, she grabbed the gavel, flung it at the wall, and screamed, "You'll all be sorry, you'll see." Then she bolted for the door, leaving behind a bewildered but invigorated community. We had won the battle, but the war, it seemed, was far from over. The gavel lay shattered on the clubhouse floor, a broken symbol of Karen's failed reign. Her exit had been as chaotic as her attempts at control. A stunned silence hung in the air for a moment, before bursting into a cacophony of relieved chatter. We, the united neighbors, had won this skirmish, but the scent of victory was quickly tainted by the lingering taste of unresolved tension. The immediate elation of seeing Karen flee was potent, but it didn't magically erase the months of simmering resentment or the deep cracks she'd opened in our community. In the days that followed, our focus shifted from just opposing Karen to dismantling her entire fabricated structure. Mark, with his sharp legal mind, spearheaded the effort. We discovered that Karen's official HOA had no legal standing whatsoever. The flyers, the proposed bylaws, the fines, they were all baseless. The property management company, now our reluctant allies, confirmed that they had consistently advised Karen against her punitive measures, citing lack of authority and proper governance. Their representative, the quiet woman from the meeting, now openly shared documentation proving Karen's relentless pressure to enforce fines that were never legitimate. This revelation, while validating our frustrations, also unleashed a new wave of anger. How could one person with no actual power cause so much distress? The initial surge of neighborhood solidarity began to fray at the edges. Some neighbors, once vocal, now grew weary, wanting only to return to their quiet lives. Others, emboldened by the victory, started to bicker amongst themselves, arguing over who deserved credit or what true community standards should be. The very act of standing up to Karen had ironically pulled back a curtain on existing, quieter disagreements that had been festering beneath the surface. Karen Thompson herself vanished from public sight for a time. Her house remained, a dark, silent monument to her failed ambition. Eventually, it went on the market, listed discreetly, and sold within weeks to a couple new to the area, blissfully unaware of the drama that had unfolded. The fake HOA was unequivocally dead, its phantom board dissolved before it ever truly formed. The dreams of mandatory fees, dictated landscaping, and quiet dogs were crushed. But the cost was evident. The neighborhood was free from Karen's direct tyranny, yet it wasn't quite the peaceful haven it once was. The trust had been broken, replaced by a lingering unease and a wary vigilance. No one quite looked at their neighbors the same way, or saw a stray flyer without a flicker of suspicion. The grand conclusion wasn't a celebration, but a quiet, hollow realization that some battles, even when won, leave permanent scars. The community, stripped bare of its false governance, was left to pick up the pieces, and some pieces, it seemed, were just too fragmented to ever truly fit back together. Seriously, who gives these Karens the authority to even start an HOA? The sheer nerve of Karen Thompson to just decide she's in charge, sending out fake flyers and threatening people's pets. That dog poisoning note is absolutely deranged. This isn't just about controlling hedge height. It's about a deeply disturbed individual trying to exert power over an entire neighborhood. And the gall of her to try and fine an elderly woman over bird feeders. She clearly has no life beyond tormenting her neighbors. Good on William and the others for finally standing up to this lunatic. Hope they run her out of town on a rail. Some people just crave control, and it always blows up in their face. This isn't community, it's a cult of one. I'm telling you, HOAs are just thinly veiled excuses for power-tripping busybodies to feel important. This story is a perfect example of what happens when you let someone like Karen Thompson get even an inch of authority. The fact that she was pushing for mandatory $150 monthly dues and ridiculous fines for excessive noise, read normal dog sounds, just screams cash grab and control obsession. It's not about making the neighborhood better, it's about making her feel like a queen. The audacity to print up official flyers for a non-existent organization and then try to fire the actual management company because they wouldn't play ball with her insane demands, that takes a special kind of twisted genius. And the threat against the dog, that's not just a neighborly dispute, that's criminal intent. What kind of person threatens to harm an innocent animal over barking? A truly vile one. I bet she was already imagining all the little rules she'd implement, like color-coded garbage bins and mandatory weekly lawn inspections. It's a miracle the neighbors finally got their act together. Most communities just roll over and let these dictatorships form. This is why you always question the initial voluntary phase. It always escalates. This community clubhouse scene, absolute cinematic gold. The tension, William dropping the dog threat note, Mrs. Henderson standing up for her little chickadees. It's perfect. But the real villain here isn't just Karen, it's the system that allows people like her to even attempt these power grabs. If there wasn't even a loose association, she wouldn't have had a toehold. The fact that she was trying to get a legitimate management company to rubber stamp her fake fines is chilling. It shows a complete disregard for legality and common decency. She didn't just want to be in charge, she wanted to be the law. And when she realized she couldn't con the actual professionals, she tried to fire them. This is why due diligence is so important, people. Don't let a Karen get a foothold in your neighborhood. Fight back early, and fight back hard. You don't owe self-appointed tyrants anything.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.